Welcome back, everyone. We are going to move into a pretty quick lesson in which we are going to examine a couple scenarios about how to enable traffic across multiple networks using both network peering and also combining network peering with VPN or other hybrid connections. In this lesson, we are going to start off with the default configuration in which peering connections between virtual networks are non-transitive. This is going to be a key point that you're going to be tested on quite a bit. And then next, we're going to discuss the integration of network peering with hybrid connections such as VPN, and how you can combine VPN connections with peering connections and how that connection can be shared between different networks. So jumping on into our first discussion, a key default configuration that you need to be familiar with is that network peering connections are not transitive. There are a few exceptions to these rules. However, the default configuration out of the box, so to speak, means that network traffic cannot transit multiple networks in different peering combinations. So what are we talking about with this? Let's say, for example, we have three virtual networks peered together. In this case, we have VNet1 peered to VNet2 and VNet2 peered to VNet3. In this setup, by default, virtual network peerings do not daisy chain connectivity, which means that even though VNet1 can talk to VNet2 and 2 can talk to 3, VNet1 cannot talk to VNet3 going through our VNet2 peering connections. Instead, if we want VNet1 to be able to talk to VNet3, we must create a separate peering connecting VNet1 to VNet3 in addition to the VNet2 peerings so one can talk to 3. So once again, the primary takeaway is that virtual network peerings will not go through one network to another. Instead, you have to create another direct peering. Now, with that said, there are a couple very specific exceptions we're going to talk about here in a little bit of a later lesson that deal specifically when working with virtual appliances or also the Azure Firewall service. However, by default, outside these very specific scenarios, VNet peering is not transitive between more than two networks. Next, let's talk about how to integrate peering connections with hybrid connections such as VPN and ExpressRoute. Now, compared to just pure peering connections, network gateway connections such as VPN can be transitive. By that, we mean that a peered or a remote network can exchange traffic over a network gateway that the host network is connected to. Let's look at another possible example. In this scenario, we have two virtual networks, VNet1 and VNet2, and in this case, VNet1 is connected over a VPN connection to an on-premises location. In this case, since the connection from VNet1 to on-premises is a VPN connection as opposed to a network peering connection, if we peer VNet2 to VNet1, we are able to exchange private traffic from VNet1 to the on-premises location going through VNet1, our host network, which will work compared to peering connections which are not transitive. With that said, though, there are a couple of additional configurations for both the remote and the host network that you need to be familiar with. The first configuration to know is that to enable VPN transit, the host VNet, in this example, VNet1, needs to allow gateway transit. Now keep in mind that the command line or PowerShell syntax and the portal syntax will be a little bit different. In this case, the portal syntax that you see in the bottom left uses the phrasing of use this virtual network's gateway or route server. However, if we are enabling it through either Azure CLI or PowerShell, allow gateway transit will be the command format we need to know. In this case, the host network, as the command states, is allowing traffic from the gateway to transit through it to our peered network. The other part of the equation is in the remote network, we just need to enable the configuration of use remote gateway. In this case, VNet2 needs to enable itself to use the VNet gateway hosted in VNet1. From a command line perspective, the syntax is use remote gateway. From the portal example in the bottom left, it is the option to use the remote virtual network's gateway or route server. So once again, as a brief summary, you are able to transit VPN connections from one network over to another, in which case you need to configure both peered networks in which the hosting network needs to allow gateway transit and the remote or peered network needs to enable use of remote gateway. With that, that's going to wrap up this fairly quick lesson on how to enable traffic across multiple networks. Let's go ahead and cover our key takeaways before we move on. First off, we covered that by default, peering connections and pure network peering setups are non-transitive. In other words, you're not able to daisy chain private network access between three networks. In other words, network 1 peer to 2 and 2 to 3. Network 1 must directly peer to 3 in order to share connections. With that, there is a notable exception involving virtual appliances, and we are going to cover that here in just a little bit. And we also reviewed working with hybrid connections, in this case VPN in our example, in which network gateway, or in this case VPN traffic, is transitive. However, to do so, the hosting virtual network must allow gateway transit, and the remote or peer network must enable the configuration to use remote gateway. That's going to go ahead and wrap up this lesson. Let's go ahead and move on to the next one.